Hey everyone, that was very complicated getting on here. I hope you can hear me okay. This might be a completely different link than what I originally sent out. So I'm just going to wait a couple minutes to see if anybody joins and then we can have a quick conversation, a Q&A, and I have obviously an announcement to make. I'm here by myself. Catherine Kellogg of Going Zero Waste was supposed to join me today, but she has lost her voice. And that is not exactly conducive to having a conversation, not having a voice. So she will not be joining us today, but I thought, well, I've already set the expectation that I would be here at noon. So I thought I would just keep our date. And I apologize, and Catherine apologizes as well. But we will reschedule for sure, and you'll get your chance to talk to Catherine and ask her any questions you have. Obviously, in the meantime, I really encourage you to follow her. Check out her blog called goingzerowaste.com. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Let me know if you can see me okay. Let me know if the connection is okay. I've got a lot of tabs open. I am very guilty of keeping many tabs open when I work. So if it might be slowing down the connection, just let me know, and I will close some tabs, even though it's very painful for me to do so. So hi, everybody. Welcome. Let me know where you're from, what your questions are. I am here to answer any questions you have related to really anything. It's an Ask Me Anything Q&A. So anything you want to know. Just to let you know, there are a couple spots left, just 2 spots left for the Compassion in Action Conference Platinum level. They're almost sold out. So if you'd like to join us and before the price goes up, you really want to register today. The price is going up on May 31st. And of course, if you want to join me here in my home with my husband and cats and have some drinks and goodies with us and see some deer and just enjoy some private time together, you can join at the Platinum level. And then of course, you can obviously join us at the Gold level as well. And those prices will be going up as well. So make sure you register for the conference. And of course, that's where Catherine Kellogg, you would meet her. That's why we were doing these interviews with the speakers who are coming to the Compassion in Action Conference. And last week, I spoke with Ari Nessel, who hopefully you've watched it. He's just such a wonderful person, and he'll be talking about creating a practice of mindfulness as advocates, as vegans, and of course, Stephanie Redcross, who's going to be talking about creating a vegan business or just being a vegan ambassador in your line of work right now, at your work. We will also be talking to Christy Middleton, who she and I together are going to be talking about effective forms of advocacy. So the conference is going to be pretty amazing. I'm really looking forward to it. So any questions you have, and then finally, what was the other announcement I wanted to make? I will be doing live Q&As. I've decided to do them on a regular basis, but schedule them out. So right now it's Friday at noon, and in the future, starting probably next week, I'm going to do Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. I'll be announcing this. You'll be seeing more and more about it. But I hear from so many of you who have so many questions, and I really want to make sure that you here on Facebook can follow me, ask your questions, and we can chat. So it'll be regular. So set your calendars every Wednesday, live Facebook. Q&A, Ask Me Anything at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Okay. Hi, everybody. And yes, in both interviews, indeed, were fantastic with Ari and Stephanie. Colby. Hi, Colby. Hear you and see you fine. This is my first time live. Shout out from Las Vegas. Wonderful. Welcome. I wonder if it's sunny there. I'm actually suffering from a vitamin D deficiency right now because I think I'm finally getting my comeuppance. I've been bragging about how wonderful the weather is in Northern California for so many years, and finally, this is ridiculous. It has been foggy and cloudy and cold and windy for 2 weeks, and I'm miserable. Les Mis is my mantra these days. Friends will write to me from across the street or from down the street, and they'll be like, this is ridiculous. Where's the sun? Les Mis. Just miserable. So I hope it's sunny there in Las Vegas. Celia, hi Celia, where are you from? Celia asks, says, struggling with the zero waste lifestyle. My kids love palm hearts and olives and other jar foods, which are so much cheaper than the olive meze bar. Listen, You're going to hear me say this a million times about zero waste, the way you've heard me say a million times about being vegan. It is not about being perfect. Even though zero waste has zero built into it, it's an aspiration. So it is not, you're not going to reach perfection. And if you do try, you really will drive yourself crazy. You'll drive your family crazy, and you will stop. That is why there's so much recidivism, I think, in veganism, is because people really set these, it becomes an ideology that they aspire to, which is really not possible. Rather than seeing veganism as the means to an end, literally the means to either unconditional compassion or optimal wellness, they see it as an end in itself. And that's what I would really encourage you to do when thinking about zero waste. You know, one of the things I'm trying to do in the podcast episodes, and of course I'll be doing this in future projects, can't talk about that right now, related to zero waste, is I'm really trying to establish the principles, okay? It's not about, you know, I've never been someone, I mean, this is very new for me, but, you know, there's a lot of zero wasters who carry a jar around and show you how much waste is in that jar. That's not accurate. And I think it really creates an unrealistic expectation for people who aspire to reducing their own waste and lightening their footprint on the earth. So that's not what zero waste is about. One of the things I really encourage people to do is to think differently about zero waste and think of it in terms of valuing the things that we bring into our lives, valuing everything we bring in so that we use the value of what that thing was created for until we can't use it anymore. And at that point, we could probably convert it into another value. So let me give you an example. You mentioned the palm hearts and the olives, and you said other jarred foods. So palm hearts, I'm imagining coming in an aluminum can. And let's talk about that for a moment. So if you're doing really well, if you're not using single-use plastic, if you're not going to the store and just filling everything up in a plastic bag, if you're I think, again, single-use plastic is a really good place to start, just kind of mentally and practically. But let's say you really want, like you're doing really well in all ways, but you really want, your kids love palm of hearts. Aluminum, and this is where we have to understand the making of things and the purpose of things. When things are designed for discard, that's a problem. Aluminum happens to be one of these materials that can be recycled again and again and again and again and again and never lose its quality. So it's 100% recyclable. Now, I did start the Zero Waste podcast episode, the very first one I did on Food for Thought, talking about the fact that zero waste is not about recycling. And that's meant to say that too many people rely on recycling because so many of us would say, yeah, I don't create any waste, I just recycle everything. Well, that's not zero waste, right? That's not trying to reduce the amount we're bringing into our lives. That's just expecting someone else to take responsibility for the goods we took into our lives temporarily, and then we just, shove it off to someone else, i.e. the recycling companies. So my point is, there is a time, this isn't about zero recycling completely, right? And recycling meaning composting too, right? So a broader definition of what recycling means. It means reusing the thing that we take into our lives. So aluminum is one of those things. Now, I'm not just saying this because there happens to be a scenario in my life where I am not able to reduce aluminum cans, and that has to do with my cat food, my cat's food, not my cat food. I don't eat cat food, but my cat's food is canned, and it's in aluminum cans, and I wash those cans out, put them in my recycling bin, and I do not feel that I have now put something into a landfill because I know very much that that aluminum will be recycled. I rinse it out first, I wash it out. Of course, they do sort at the recycling plant here in my county, but I wash it out and I feel good about that. You're talking about jars. So yeah, that's okay. So, if you have a lot of jars, Celia, in your pantry already, I have a drawer full, and I'll show everybody later because I just think they're so pretty. I have found so many uses for those glass jars. At first, I thought I wasn't going to be able to find use for those jars, but I have, especially because when I make vegetable stock, for instance, I like to store the vegetable stock in small jars so that I don't have one big, huge batch of vegetable stock that I need to thaw if I just need 2 cups of it. So you might find that there are a lot more uses for those glass jars the more you make things from scratch, etc. But give them to friends. you can be an inspiration to friends and family and neighbors. If you have a lot of jars, you can also donate them to a Goodwill store. So that's not waste, having those beautiful glass jars. Use them and give them away. But that's another example. There might be things that you are buying because, again, you're doing really well in all these other areas, but you really want to buy, I don't know, whatever it is, your favorite salad dressing or olives. Washing those jars and reusing those jars, that's the point of valuing the thing and using it for the value for which it was made. Does that make sense? Does that help? And Atlanta stopped recycling glass. Interesting. Yeah, well, that's an example where you can say, okay, if there's something that can't be recycled, that I can't trust, or I can't push off the responsibility to someone else, i.e. a recycling company, then I'm going to take full responsibility. That's one of the things I love about Paul Palmer, who is the person who coined the term zero waste. What I love is that the definition of waste, and by his definition, and I really love it, is a good for which its owner has stopped taking responsibility. I love that. That means, and one of the things I'm talking about in the next podcast episode I'm writing, is the difference between being a consumer. Listen to this. This is very important. The difference between being a consumer and being an owner. And etymologically speaking, there's even a lot to say about that. When you're a consumer, it's just about taking what you can and leaving the rest. Literally, it means taking. The root of consume means to take, right? So you literally take what you can and then you just discard the rest. Owning, on the other hand, really has more to do with taking responsibility and possessing. So if you see yourself as an owner of that glass, so if you see it that way, then that means when you say, if I'm going to take a glass jar into my life, into my home, I'm going to purchase this, I'm taking full responsibility for it. So in a way, the fact that Atlanta has stopped recycling, I do think there should be recycling until we all get to this point of this mentality. But if we say, oh God, our city isn't recycling, then we actually wind up taking responsibility for the things that we bring into our lives, rather than saying, well, I'm just going to get whatever I want, and the recycling company will take care of this, and the garbage company will take care of that, and the compost company will take care of that. Does that make sense? So it means that we literally take responsibility for the things that we bring into our lives. And that means that if we can't, we make a different decision. So for the glass jars, you take responsibility for that glass jar. That becomes part of your ownership, and you own it, you possess it, you take full responsibility. But if there's something you want and you can't take full responsibility for it, then we might make a different decision. I hope that helps. Does that help? Does anybody have any thoughts or questions about that? Because that differentiation to me, the difference between ownership and consumerism, really makes a lot of sense to me, and it really informs the decisions I make about what I buy. So I am reading more of your comments here. Angela said, I would absolutely love the premium for the conference to see the gorgeous kitties, but I have to save for Rwanda. Totally get it, Angela. I understand. Angela's joining us on one of our Rwanda trips, and I think I saw Julie Morgan here too. Yeah, exactly. Julie is also joining us for one of our Rwanda trips. Nicole also is in Atlanta. Celia, so you've got some like-minded folks there. And Christine says, could you please give your point of view about different ways of spreading the vegan message? For instance, Direct Action Everywhere, Cube of Truth, and similar organizations. Do you think the more provocative and loud forms of activism is helpful, or maybe not? Some people really need a wake-up call. Love from Denmark. Hi, Christine. So one of the things that Christy Middleton and I are going to be talking about, one of the sessions at the Compassion in Action Conference, is going to be very much about that. We're going to be breaking down all the different types of advocacy and talking about their efficacy. Here's my short answer, even though you don't probably believe that I could give you a short answer. I really do believe that there is room for everything and every type of advocacy and every type of activism. Now, some might be more effective than others, and maybe that's what you're really asking me. But in the end, not everyone's going to be attracted to participating in one form of advocacy over another. And not every recipient is going to be open to all forms of advocacy. So, when I first got started, when I first became an animal advocate, and my work is very much still grounded in information and resources and inspiration, just like giving people the resources and the tools they need. But when I first started, that came in the form of leafleting. I was tabling. I was doing street TV, which is now it's very trendy and called Cube of Truth. But I used to stand on the corner in Berkeley with a television set and a VCR and a handmade tripod that enabled the TV to sit on top of it with a platform. I used to do that, and I used to play Meet Your Meat, and I used to engage people who would watch the slaughter videos and stop and ask questions, and I would hand Why Vegan pamphlets out. I love that memory, and I think it was so powerful for me. I loved those moments of watching people have that awakening. I'm literally getting emotional thinking of the different interactions I had with people who watched that footage most of the time for the very first time and have their moments of awakening right then and there. I don't discount that at all. Do I think there's one way to do it? No. I mean, so, that stopped being effective for me when I realized I could reach more people doing X, or I could reach more people doing Y, or my time was better spent sitting down and writing a book that, millions, hopefully, of people, we don't have millions yet, but that millions of people could potentially buy. The podcast episode that I could sit down, I could spend several hours writing a podcast episode that, all of a sudden now, thousands and thousands of people would be able to hear right off the bat. So it's just a matter of like my skills were broadened, and my desire to use my skills was deepened. And so, but then, there's always room for someone else to come and do that. So, you say, do I think more provocative and loud forms of activism is helpful? These cubes of truth, I mean, obviously they're not loud. That's not what you're talking about, but showing people footage and showing people information. No, I think it's really helpful. I think people need to see that. And I think because there's so much concealed from the public, especially by the industry and our own cognitive dissonance, that we sometimes have to put it in front of people. Now, most of you who follow me know that I don't believe putting it in front of people with any kind of agenda or any kind of anger is effective. So that is where I draw the line. I don't believe making people feel bad or stupid or guilty is effective. So that's where I draw the line, is really being attached and really attacking people. But having video screens that's showing footage, I think it's very effective. I think where it's not effective is where it's just meant to be provocative. I think if it's meant to just provoke, I think that can be problematic. So if you're stopping traffic and you're pissing everybody off because you want to show, your billboard or your signs or whatever, and now you've lost the audience because they're annoyed at you because they really need to get somewhere, I don't think that's a win. I think there's some fine lines. So I think there's room for everybody is really my answer. And I know that's kind of annoying because I don't think there is one. I think working with restaurants, I think working with the food industry, I think what's happening in terms of getting more wonderful vegan products on the market is really powerful. I think what Christy Middleton does, where they're training chefs in schools and institutions, that is so powerful. I mean, the more people who are expert at feeding people, especially in institutions in these large groups, who can make really good vegan food for people, that's massive. So all of them have a place, and it's really a matter for us as advocates to decide where we think we can best be served. And it might be 2 or 3 places as well. So Nicole says, I just had the opportunity to educate a coworker on why soy is not evil, and a moment later received notification that you were alive. Happy coincidence, because I referred to your podcast when talking to her. Oh, I love it, Nicole. That's awesome. Yes. The bane of my existence and all of our existence, and being able to educate people and let them know that soybean is just a bean. And of course, if you haven't checked out my YouTube channel, I have a number of videos under the title of Vegan Point of View, and it answers a lot of those typical questions that people have around, soy, protein, would animals become extinct if we stopped eating them? People would lose their jobs if we stopped killing animals. All of those questions are answered, obviously, in the podcast and also in the YouTube channel. Gina says, I saw the food stored in your fridge. Is it sanitary to store cut tomatoes, cucumbers out of the open fridge, just like the uncut fruits and veggies? Yeah, so the whole point, one of the things that I talked about in the Zero Waste Food Waste Part 2 episode of the Food for Thought podcast is I talked about, that there's a lot of confusion. There's so much food waste in people's homes because there's so much confusion around, use by dates on food labels. That has to do with the manufacturers just saying this is the peak of freshness for the food that they're selling. It's so arbitrary. It has nothing to do with safety. Safety has everything to do with how cold your refrigerator is. A friend was here this morning. Paul Shapiro stayed over last night. He had a meeting this morning, and we were talking all about all of the ways in which we contribute to global warming, really, in our lives. And refrigerators are actually one of the largest uses of carbon and obviously energy. And it's so sad because we have these like modern refrigerators, and then people still aren't even using them properly. So we're using all of this energy to preserve food. The whole point of refrigeration is to, give food a little bit longer time to stay fresh before we eat it. It's a convenience thing, right? It's pretty convenient, but it's also pretty good in terms of food safety. And yet people they don't have the refrigerator set at the right temperature. And so food goes bad. People treat their refrigerators like compost bins and then wonder why their food goes bad, because you weren't eating the food and you weren't storing it correctly. And it wasn't at the right temperature. So all of these things are going to preserve your food. Having an open, a tomato cut open in the refrigerator, as long as it's in the right temperature, and don't quote me and don't get food poisoning and then blame me. But the point is that bacteria can't grow on colder temperatures. And so that's not a concern. I will say that where there is a concern around bacteria is where you also have meat stored in the same place with fruits and vegetables, to be really honest, because the bacteria that are going to grow on the, carcass, because it's a dead piece of flesh, and bacteria grow on flesh. Then if you have open cut vegetables, that's where I would be concerned, or fruits. But I don't think that's the case in your house, Gina. So those are all considerations. But these things are so simple. What I really encourage people to do is just turn your refrigerator down and use the refrigerator the way it was meant to be used, so that we don't waste food. And that we're not using all this energy for this, this refrigerated, this appliance for naught, is what I have to say about that. Angela says, I've been doing the bring your own bags for years, but because of you, I've been trying to get zero waste, and I've actually lost weight by not buying chips, etc. I know, it's really true. Like when you're not buying all that crap because it's all in packaging, you actually, eat a lot more whole foods. The other day, David said to me, he said, I really want something sweet. It may have been last night. He said, I really want something sweet. Is there nothing sweet to snack on here? And we don't usually have a lot of sweet stuff. We don't have junk food anyway, typically. But I said, there's the most delicious strawberries in the refrigerator. And he had the strawberries where, David eats fruits. David is vegan and he eats a huge variety of plant foods, but he wouldn't have chosen those strawberries if we had, something snackier. And David doesn't tend to want sweets. David tends to want salt. And he is the one who buys the chips. And he buys the pretzels, which when he does, I tell him to give me 3 and then go hide them, because I can't have that in my house because it's too easy to eat. So, but it's true. You really can lose weight if you want to and if you need to, being zero waste, because you just eat a lot less crap. I'm glad that helps, Celia. Louise said, hi from the UK. What can I do with the bits of fruit and veg left over for my juicing? I don't want to waste it. Well, the first thing I would ask you is, can you compost at all? Do you have any ability to compost, Louise? And I'll let you answer that before I answer it for you. And, stay tuned, because part 3 of the food waste series that I'm doing on Food for Thought is all about composting. I can't even tell you how excited I get about soil. I get so excited about using the vegetable scraps that we have to make stock, to then compost. So we are lucky enough to have, our city has a huge compost program, but I do compost here at the house. And I would never just say to you, yeah, just compost that, without giving you some guidance around how to do that. So my first question to you would be, do you have the ability to? And ability to also means, do you just live in a, I don't know, a structure? Because vermicomposting, worm composting, and I know there's probably some vegans who think there's something unethical about worm composting. I happen to not think there's anything wrong with worm composting. Worms are the happiest little critters in eating your leftover juicing goods, and then they poop, and then you can use their poop. So we can talk more about vermicomposting and the ethics around that, but I don't have any ethical qualms about that. They're in their natural environment, and they're very happy. So there are a lot of people who, if you don't have a backyard area or even an outside area, or you're in an apartment, who you can absolutely get some really wonderful structures for composting right inside your house. So that's what Debbie said as well. Catherine says, when I watched Earthlings, I cried like a baby. I don't know how you can watch those videos and not be moved. It's true, Catherine, and yet our ability to block things off, our willful blindness, can be pretty strong. I'm writing my book, In Defense of Compassion, The Joyful Vegan's Guide to Life right now. I just finished chapter 3. Chapter 2 is all about willful blindness, and chapter 3 is all about the epiphany and the awakening that we have. So you just kind of encapsulated it right there. We have willful blindness. We don't see what's right in front of us. Something gets put in front of us, an animal, a person, a thought, something someone says, a movie, a video, a book, and we have our epiphany. So that's exactly the process that so many of us go through. Irina says, what do you think of vegans that occasionally indulge in animal products, a friend of a friend? On one hand, it's better than eating animal products all the time. On the other hand, it rubs me the wrong way. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we have to let go of our own agenda for what we want this world to be like. And I think what we can only do is focus on ourselves and then advocate for the best way we think to be, but also just just let go. I mean, if I were attached to the consumption, to the people around me consuming animal flesh and fluids, I would be a basket case. What I would rather you do, Irina, is instead of focusing on the friend of a friend of a friend, or a neighbor or a family member who eats animal products once in a while but is otherwise eating, plant-based, what I would rather you do is focus on the people in your life who do agree with you, who are aligned with you, who would join you in the mission I have to create a more compassionate world. I would rather see you expend your energy on joining the forces of people who agree with you, rather than worrying about the people who don't agree with you, or even the people who aren't 100% but are 90%, right? That's the mistake most vegans make, not you, Irina, but the real mistake I see, an overarching mistake I see vegans and advocates make, is that they are more willing to create divisiveness with people who agree with 90% or 95% of their philosophy and lifestyle and living and perspective, rather than taking that and being like, okay, that's good. Like, we're good. Like, we're like 90%. That's awesome. Let me harness what we do agree about. Let's harness the energy and the power we have in the 95% that we agree about, and then take that to go create the world we want. That is so much more effective than arguing with for the 10% of the people who are aligned with us in every other way. And it's so much more effective than worrying about the 5% that of a person in our lives who eats animal products, or a small amount of animal products. Does that make sense? Hope that helps. Lori says, I love your videos on soy. It's crazy how much soy phobia is out there. I quote you all the time. LOL, lol. It's just a bean. It is indeed. That's right, Gina. I wouldn't think so. Louise says, yes, we need to compost. Gonna start, just don't know what to do. Have a small garden. Awesome. You are in such a great place. Okay. So obviously you can find a million things online. There's kind of a joke, ask 3 different composters what they do, or people who compost what they do, and you'll get 10 different answers. So there are so many opinions on composting. What I'm trying to do in part 3, it's taking me a while to write it because I really want to make sure I'm giving you the best information possible, is I'm whittling it all down to make it really manageable for you. do. But stay close, stay tuned, ask whatever questions you have. You know, I'm going to be covering all of it in that episode. But of course, you can start researching right now and taking a look. You know, when you think about composting, you've got like big pile composting, which is, you know, for most people who live on like big property who can, like, you know, take a pitchfork and turn that compost. You've got tumble composters, which I'm going to be talking about in the podcast episode, and that really is conducive for people who live in smaller spaces, but also who just don't want to deal with all of that. So you can just tumble it, and that's how you turn it and create the oxygen. Or obviously there's vermicomposting, which is the worm composting, and there's lots of really, really pretty structures that you can get and just put in your apartment. It would be inside. You wouldn't put them outside. Well, it depends on where you live. We have some worms outside, and it's just a temperate climate, so they tend to be fine, or they are fine. They've been thriving for years. But if you're in an area where it gets cold, you want to bring the worms in. So you want to have a nice structure for them to live inside. So we will do more for sure. Gina lives in a high-rise and has a small balcony garden. Have wondered about composting for that. Absolutely. And in fact, one of the products that I'm going to be talking about that actually on the podcast episode, people are going to be eligible to win their own. There's a small version of these tumbler composters that I'm talking about, and that's really fantastic for people who live in high-rises or apartments or just have a balcony. Steph, how do you say your name? Stephanie, Proud Vegan. Have you watched Okja on Netflix? I have watched it. I was just looking through, you know, one of the things I'm doing writing this book is looking through all the letters I've received over the years. And there's been a few people who've seen that movie and become vegan from it. That's what I mean when I say we all have to do our work in this world, because we never know how it's going to touch the people who are exposed to it. So, you know, that movie, yes, from a vegan perspective, there are vegans who hate that movie because it's not perfect. And don't talk about veganism. At the end, they're eating a chicken. And like, yes, okay. We can't be attached to all of that. We just can't. We'll be insane, and maybe we already are. But that's a great example of a movie that's really moved people. Gina says, I hope someone turns your book into a documentary. I think it would be powerful, Gina. I agree with you. Thank you, Lori. And thanks, Christina. So that is great. Thanks, everybody, for your time. I am going to head out because I have a lunch date with my husband right now. We're going to a Vietnamese restaurant down in Oakland on 17th. Apparently, it's the oldest Vietnamese restaurant in Oakland, and we're going to go have lunch. My poor husband has a temporary crown in his teeth right now, and so he's just in need of soup. So we're going to go have some soup, and it was really great to hear from all of you. Again, remember, I'm going to be doing these Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. And, you know, as you know, just because you missed the live doesn't mean you can't still ask questions. So definitely stay engaged, but mark your calendars. We'll start it next Wednesday, and we will continue to have interviews with the people who are coming to the Compassion in Action Conference, and maybe just more in the future anyway, just with other influencers and awesome advocates. So Catherine Kellogg will be back as soon as she and I can create a new date. The poor thing, like I said, lost her voice. She feels terrible. But make sure you at least register for the conference so that you can meet Catherine in person, even if it's just for the gold level. It's going to be an amazing weekend, 2 full days of pretty awesome speakers, tons of awesome content, and just a group of the most wonderful, like-minded people filled with compassion and integrity. And I'm so excited about that. So have a wonderful day. I'm going to go brave the cold out here in Northern California where it's, I don't know, it's like 60 degrees or something. That's really cold. It's like 55 or 60 degrees, and it's very cold because there's no sun. All right. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon. For the animals, this is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for watching.